Hi everyone, we'll be waiting 2 to 3 minutes before starting the webinar to accommodate for the rest of the attendees who are in the middle of connecting. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us and thanks for being part of our community. My name is Valan Kolika and I will be your host for today. Thank you for your participation and just a few reminders before we start with the presentation. If you have issues viewing the stream at any time during the presentation and are using the web browser version of Teams, please refresh your browser. If you're using the desktop app of Teams, please exit and rejoin. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and it will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/security-webinars. Closed captions are provided during the live broadcast. You can enable it by clicking on the CC button located at the lower right corner of your screen. During this time, please feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them in the live event Q&A window. And by clicking on the Ask Question button. Be aware that any questions you post will be publicly visible. However, if you choose, you can post your question anonymously by checking the box right below where you enter it. Now, we often get many questions on these webinars, and we will do our best to respond to all of them in real time. In the event, if the answer was not provided, or if you may have additional questions post this event, please don't hesitate to raise them on our Azure Network Security Forum at aka.ms/Azure Network Security Community. If you're listening to this after the fact as a recording, that's also a great place to ask a question. We'd love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars, which you can do so at aka.ms/security-webinar-feedback. And while you're there, please join our community by visiting aka.ms/security-community, which is the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products. You will be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, which you can sign up for that at aka.ms/security private preview. And while you're there, you can request features, you can give feedback, review our product roadmaps, attend in-person events, hopefully to come soon, or join webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them. So we hope you'll join us. Today, we're officially kicking off the Azure Network Security webinar series, made of 8 parts, and in today's session, Toby will introduce us to Azure Network Security. Toby Ottolerin is a program manager with our Azure Network Security team. And without further ado, I will turn it over to him. Toby, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Toby. Thank you, Valon, for the introduction. As Valon has mentioned, my name is Toby Ottolerin. I'm from the Cloud Security Engineering team, and we are going to be kicking off a part of a series this morning. We are a part of a bigger security team in Azure for Microsoft, and we'll be focusing on the network infrastructure in your environment. The purpose of this is to provide more information and insight into the tools that are available to improve the network security posture for your elements. So we hope that by the time this series is over, you will have more ideas about how to improve the current security state of your environment, tools that are currently available that you may not be aware of, how you can channel them, and you can have more information and access to repositories and documentation that will improve that knowledge. So yeah, without further ado, I'm just going to go straight into it. Please feel free to use the question boxes to your right, and at the end of this presentation, we'll look into some of those questions. I believe you're going to get some of those questions live. You're going to get answers to them. So please feel free to feel comfortable during this presentation and provide your input as well. So this presentation is going to cover 4 major aspects of our security portfolio. We have the Azure DS Protection Standard, the Azure Web Application Firewall, Azure Firewall, and Azure Firewall Manager. So within these 4, we're going to be talking and be moving from layer 4 to layer 7. And we'll be looking at the different components and how you can use these tools to provide security. So we are a part of a bigger Azure network of infrastructure. So we all know that we have different regions all across the world, and we are still building to improve on this. As at now, we are available in about 140 countries, and most of our services are available to our customers within these regions. So it's very, very important, and it's imperative that we provide some basic security, at least minimal, to optimize how your environment is secured. So you can look through all of this and see it as being responsible, and that's why we're also bringing our customers to do their part, so everybody can work towards improving the network security for everyone. This is advantage for having teamwork with our customers, having visibility with our customers, letting our customers know that we value what they have, what we share with them. The Azure Net, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using the 4 major sections of the Azure Network Security Azure Network Services environment to talk about the different ways to improve the architecture that you have. In Azure Networking Services, we usually look at all our environment from 4 different perspectives. The first one is really to protect. It's super important that whatever we have is protected. And how do we do that? We do that with the DS Protection, the Azure WAF, the Firewall Manager. The whole idea is let every end-to-end node be protected as much as possible. Then how do we connect? So we have different ways you can have a connection to your environment. So this is how you provide secure layup connectivity by using different encryption method, different compression method, the express route, different modes of connectivity are currently available, and sometimes you don't even have to traverse into the internet. You can just stay within the Azure network to provide a form of connectivity. Then monitoring. if you've worked in the security or in the tech space, you cannot emphasize this enough. Having access to quality data, having access to live insight and feed, having access to visualizations that help to provide information about your current state is super important. Then delivery, how do we do content delivery? How do we do load balancing? How do we make sure that resources are not overwhelmed? How do we make sure that customers get the appropriate, they go to the right backend pool resource each time to get what content we want to get across to them. So all of these are the things that we manage in Azure networking services. And if you work with any of the Azure tools, you will always see that you are falling within one of these at any time while working with Azure networking. So we're going to start with the first one, Azure DDoS Protection. Azure DDS Protection is one of the DDoS, which is distributed denial of service, is one of the oldest attacks in the book. If you remember the stories from Kevin Paulson and Kiss FM, where he denied all other callers just so he could douse the network with his own phone call, so he could win a Porsche car. Or if you remember Mafia Boy versus CNN and Yahoo. So you can, and these are like attacks from 15, 20 years ago. And what this does is, in case you are still new to this, what this does is you overwhelm the environment and make sure legitimate, and during that process, legitimate users are denied the rightful access to your resources. And this is what most customers do not want. You want people who are paying for your services. You want customers who you highly esteem to be able to access your resources from different parts of the world at any time. So it's important that customers who want to get to your resource at any point in time can access these specific resources. So we have different tools that we use for this, and right now we have two different methods by which we provide this service to our customers. The first one is going to be basic, and the other one is going to be standard. So the basic is how we provide responsibility for our own infrastructure, which is the Azure infrastructure. Let's look into the anatomy of DDoS attack over the years. Last 6 years, we have seen the resources that are available to demonstrate a DDoS attack improve over the years. Just following Moore's law, there's been more computing power, there's more resources available, there's more resource availability, and it's so cheap that you can easily buy tools online to even do DDoS attacks. You can easily buy scripts online, you can look for mercenary, you can get something for less than $150, and you can tell them which specific targets you have in mind. So we can, as you can see here, different reflection attacks have happened over the years, and it's grown from 400 gigabytes per second to over 2.3 terabytes per second. So it's really important. And one of the things that happened during this period is one of the ways that we accommodate this is because we now have VMs that work with skill sets that are able to to auto scale over the years. So the damage would have even been worse if we haven't had like expandable network resources going forward. So the damage is super important, and is something, preventing the damage is something very super important that we are aware of, and it's always something that every network security person dreads. So it's important that we make it clear that we have the resources to prevent the DOS attack, and it's currently available and it's well documented in our environment. So what we currently have is we are able to detect volumetric attacks and protocol attacks. And how we do this is we are able to learn how your application traffic pattern works over time. We are able to learn how your traffic behaves. We know we have an idea of the average threshold value. So we know over the years, we learned over the weeks, we learned that, and then we set a minimum threshold for your environment. So because there is automatic learning, which happens every 30 minutes, that value is a moving target. So if you provide more resource to more users, and over time your customer base is growing, we are also learning with you. So it's not something where you have to review every month or every 2 months and say, hey, let's go and manually tune this up. We do that for you automatically. We also use advanced intelligence to automatically configure and tune these settings for you. And also, we are also automatically able to mitigate and identify these attacks. So we're going to be providing more information in subsequent webinars that go further down, diving into more technicalities about how this works. But for now, I'm going to just provide that introductory information on that. And As I mentioned earlier, we have the basic and the standard. And as I mentioned, so I always give this analogy about the basic, that the basic is like when you live in an estate and it's gated. So the basic protection protects everybody in the estate. But for cases where the attack is specifically for your house or for your home, you want to make sure that you also have, say, a video camera at your door, or you have some form of strong door and your windows are closed at night, or when you're traveling, you tell a third party that, hey, I'm going to be traveling, please monitor my home. So in case of specified attack, then you also want to make sure that your home or your applications are secure. The second reason I always give for the major difference between standard over the basic is that sometimes your application might be something that requires very low threshold. And since we have a basic threshold for the basic version, if your application is lower than that threshold, then the basic might not detect DDoS when your application is currently being DDoS. So if you have a 20,000 requests per second for the basic minimum threshold and your own average threshold is 5,000, by the time request climbs up to, say, 15,000, which is about 150% increment. So in that kind of situation, you're getting overwhelmed by request and they might not be legitimate. But in that kind of situation, the basic might not be able to detect that for you. So it's always important that customers are actually able to go for the
Hey,
standard
Toby,
version.
sorry to interrupt you. Seems like there's a new feature with Teams Live Event where the captioning is enabled by default, and that's creating some confusion for the audience. Can you see if there's a button where you can just turn off the captioning from your side?
Oh, we have two captions?
Yes, it's yeah, let's.
Let me know if no.
Okay, looks like, well, no, it is, I can still see it,
Still
but
there.
yeah.
I'm not sure I have the
If
I'm
you
able to
cannot
turn.
find it, it's fine. We were just trying to eliminate that.
I think no, I don't have that.
Okay, that's fine. Sorry to interrupt you. Move on, please.
It's all right. So for I was still speaking of the DDoS protection standard and the advantages and why customers should have that. So the protection standard is available in most of our Azure regions already, and it's super important that you take advantage of that. And as I mentioned earlier, it comes with adaptive tuning, so you don't have to do manual tuning each time. It's like I always tell customers, it's like insurance. You never know when you need insurance. You can have insurance for your car for 3 years, and you just want to make sure that you're ready when you need it the most. So that's how DDoS works. And also you have insight into the attack, analytics, and the metrics. Then another thing that you have is the DDoS rapid response. So Microsoft provides that service for you. So for our customers, if you're currently being DDoS, you can reach out to the DDoS rapid response team and they will get across to you within a very short few minutes. The whole idea is we want to make sure that we are with you when you're going through a battle because we see it as a battle. It's not your fault that you're currently being attacked and you're going to need more manpower. So from the technical perspective, we make sure that we are aware and we are running along with you during that period. And also there's SLA guarantee, cost protection, and support. And this is how we prove, like I mentioned, this is how we provide support for our customers. It's not your fault that you are being DDoS. So we make sure there's some form of credit facility for you. After that is over, you also have access to the report and you can go through everything that's happened. You can have more insight into where it's occurred from, what time. You can have all of those information available to you. The architecture we have, which you can see in this diagram in this simplified mode, is we try to make sure that we look for the most logically sensible common point where there can be infraction, where there can be attack, which is your transit point. So if you look at this diagram that we have here, where you have the public internet coming in, it's always most likely the transit area, which is where you have your firewall. So in the center there, you have an Azure firewall and an Azure WAF. And this is where you have your egress and egress for the most part. So what you want to do is you want to take this virtual network that houses the firewall and the WAF, you want to pair them with other virtual networks in your environment. So if you make that central virtual network as your hub, and then you pair that with the other virtual network, as you can see them to the left and to the right as your spokes, you want to make sure those spokes are connected either by peering or some form of affiliation. As long as they are connected to where you have your firewall, you can then enable the DDoS protection on the firewall. So anybody who is affiliated to the firewall, whether through peering or through application gateway or load balancers, then they will be protected as long as they're going through firewall. So the firewall is where you want to enable the DDoS protection. So once it's enabled in that central point, every other person affiliated to it, going out through it, is protected by the DDoS protection standard. I'm going to spend a few quick minutes just talking about the differences between basic and standard. I've already mentioned this already.
Toby, sorry to interrupt you again, but let's try this one more time. I think it's at the PowerPoint level, not on a Teams Lite level. So if you go to your PowerPoint, and just do a search for subtitles, there should be a disabled or enabled button.
Subtitle, you said?
Yeah, if you search in your PowerPoint for subtitle.
Trying to find that. Give me a second.
In your right at the top in the middle screen, search.
Oh, like search?
Yeah, like at the very top on the title bar at the very top, search, and then you'll just type in subtitle. There you go.
Want to turn it off?
See if you can turn that off.
I'm not sure I have the option to turn it off right now.
Okay. So click on that English. You see the English is checked. Maybe if you can just click.
I did that already. You didn't.
Oh, you did that already. Okay. Well, then we really don't want to take much. Sorry again, but I was just getting some feedback from the folks since we have a global footprint, some folks are non-English speakers, and that's why it's creating a confusion. But let's move on. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It's all right. I want to make sure that everybody have their preference options. So their preferred option, I just can't find how to close that out. And I really apologize for that. I am very, very sorry. That's
No
something
worries.
we didn't check out. So yeah.
We tried at least.
So I've already tried to provide basic differences between the DDoS protection basic and why you should get the DDoS protection standard. And like as I mentioned, the DDoS protection standard is application specific, so it's customer specific, so you can easily get more out of that. You can have access to real-time attack metrics and resource logs. You get access to post-attack mitigation reports. Customers always want to see this, and when they don't have it, they just don't have access to that. So one of the things you want to look at is, okay, when did it happen? Where did it originate from? Is this a political issue? Is it coming from a particular region? Is it just somebody who's angry? So we just want to have more information about post-mitigation report. You also have access to the DDoS expert. I've already mentioned that. You have the application guarantee and cost protection. And of course, it's subscription based. It's so free like the DDS protection basic. But yeah, that's quite a lot on DDoS already. So subsequent webinars we do further diving into more technical details about it, how we do the mitigation. So we're gonna go to layer 7 web application firewall. So for layer 7 web application firewall, this is where we make sure we prevent attacks on your applications. So we want to make sure that you don't get SQL injection and the rest of the OWASP top 10 different attacks that can actually happen to your application. And this is super important because sometimes when we code, we tend to forget certain standards, certain security standards, and sometimes we don't do it intentionally. It could just be things that you are not aware of. It could be new way of, it could be a way of coding that you're not aware susceptible to attack. So in that kind of situation, you want to have an extra layer of protection, and this is what the WAF does for you. And the WAF does this by detecting with three different modes. There's the custom rules, there's the managed rule set, and then there's the bot protection rules. For the custom rules, these are rules that you write for yourself and say, hey, if I see anybody coming from, say, a certain country that you don't want access, please block or redirect them to this location. Or if you have this particular parameter in the header, make sure you deny this particular user. So you can do all of this form of rate limiting by writing those custom ones. Then there's the managed rule set. This is open source, and like I mentioned earlier, this utilizes the OWASP top 10 attack that you are probably common and open out there. So we make sure that the current core rule set, the most current one, is available to our users. So most of the PHP attack and Java attack that you could think of are all in this core rule set. It's a very huge encyclopedia of attacks. So you don't want to have to do all of this manually by yourself. It's like almost running into hundreds. So if you have these, then you can sleep knowing fully well that most of the most common application type of attack are currently protected by Azure for you. Then for the bot protection rules, of course, we have legitimate bots, and you want to make sure the legitimate ones have access to your resource. For example, search engine optimization or analytics. So those kind of bots you want to have. But other bots that are like are just roaming over the internet, you want to make sure that those are prevented from your environment because they can easily overwhelm resources. So these are how we detect application layer type of attack, and we make sure that they are completely mitigated. So yeah, what happens is we need a platform to use our WAF because WAFs, which is Web Application Firewall again, are deployed as policies. So you need a platform to roll them. They're like cartridges. You need a game console to use them. So we have to put our WAF either on an Azure Application Gateway or Azure Front Door. And when you install it on the gateway, the CDN or the front door, then you can choose to allow, block, redirect, or log rules when they are matched. You can also allow for protecting resources with unique requirements. You can manage rules that are built in and protect from the most common vulnerabilities as mentioned earlier. And then you can also leverage on the Microsoft Threat Intelligence feed. So this is how we update the bot signatures. So Microsoft Threat Intelligence see it as a portal where we update all the signatures over time, and you want to make sure you have real access to that. So as I mentioned and described earlier, these are the things that the WAF can do for you. And as I mentioned, we can have geo-filtering. You can use IP for your restriction if you have access, if you have IP information of the source. Then you can have HTTP parameter filtering, and you can also resize your request header. So you can say, hey, we don't want more than 128 KB. So this is how you custom the request packets, the packets that come into your environment. You can literally just build your own new environment entirely and work with it. You can have conditional rate limits at your edge. And for your edge, you want to use the Azure Front Door for that, but I'm going to get into that shortly. Bot protection integration. So I already mentioned all of this, and what we have done is we have made sure that everything is available and easily deployable. So you can configure this with the portal, with PowerShell, Terraform, whatever so it feels comfortable for you. Again, I'm just gonna go into how you use the cartridge on the consoles as mentioned earlier. So there are two ways, and usually we always recommend based on your architecture, the one you should use. There's the global and the regional architecture. So for global, this is where your edge network is. So look at the Azure Front Door as the main entry to where customers can go through before having access to your pool. Look at it as the main estate gateway. So from there, customer can have access to the resources behind in the backend pool. So if you use the WAF on Azure Front Door, you get the ability to do rate limiting, and then you can use the WAF. You can combine the WAF security feature with the load balancing feature of Azure Front Door. You can combine the security feature with the content distribution feature of the front door. So basically, you are combining two different elements to have the best graphics for your game. So look at it from that perspective that if I put WAF on front door, I'm going to be having load balancing, proper content distribution to the appropriate backend pool. I'm going to be having security at the same time. So if your application is available to everybody in the world, then you want to go for the global one. Now, to the right is the regional. And this is very important where you serve content. For instance, you have sport content that are available to certain users, or you have a particular type of movie that you want some people in a particular country to be able to watch. So you can say, hey, I'm going to put this particular one in Europe, and I'm going to set up this particular network in, say, Africa. And you want to be able to manage this by doing this logical partition. Then you can have as many application gateways as possible. So in this situation, you want to have the WAF deployed on Azure Application Gateway. So when you do that, you also have almost the same thing that you had in the global leveraging. You're going to have the security, the content distribution, and you're going to have the load balancing as well. So if you do this, you are able to leverage on this important strength of the two different products together, and then make sure that there's complete protection, fast delivery, and resource availability for your customers. So this is just a diagram that's showing what you should do. So if your application is internet facing, you can go this way. And then if you require SSL offloading, you can go that way. Because sometimes people get overwhelmed. They're like, hey, you have a myriad of products. And if you have a myriad of products, which should I use for my environment? So this is very, very easy, and we have made it very straightforward. Once you know what your application does, where it goes, and where you want to access it, you can easily say, okay, I'm going to combine application gateway with my WAF, and that's it. Or you can say, I'm just going to use front door with my WAF. But in certain situations and instances, you can actually have the three together. So that's going to be further explained in subsequent and upcoming webinars. Please make sure you do not miss it. Azure Firewall. So this is where we're coming towards the beginning of the end. So our firewall is a stateful firewall, which of course any important firewall nowadays should be stateful by now. The key aspect of the traffic, what it does is able to retain key aspects of the traffic state and information. Is able to, in terms of context and state, you are able to track sessions of network connections that is traversing the firewall. So the firewall helps you manage the east to west traffic, and it's like an ingress egress point for you. It's like a transit point. So your customers come through this point and they leave your network through this point. So we are one of the cloud native stateful firewall as a service. And the way our Azure firewall is built is we have public load facing load balancers at the front, and at the back, we have virtual machine skill set. So when your firewall is built with that simple design, what happens is the front-facing public load balancers give you that high availability because they are load balancers and they keep testing and probing and saying, okay, is our resource available? Do we have direct connectivity yet? So by doing that, we have high availability. Then on the back, in the architecture of the firewall is the VM. And because the VM is able to scale, we have auto scaling feature available. So these two components give you the high availability and auto scaling. And this is what you don't get when you have the regular, firewall that we always have from the OEM where you install and plug your cable. This auto scales, and the Azure firewall begins to scale from 60% utilization. So at this age and time, you don't want to be using firewalls that are giving up or they are giving way during live traffic, or you have increase or short burst or spike in rates. You want to make sure that your firewall can accommodate increase up to 100% increase, 200% increase in your environment. So by using the stateful auto scaling and high availability firewall, you are able to achieve all of that within Azure Firewall. So another thing we also have among other public cloud providers is that we're able to give you central governance of all traffic flows. So as I mentioned earlier, you get a high availability, traffic filtering. You can have centralized policy across virtual networks and all your subscriptions. And it's very, very simple in deployment. As you can see the diagram to the right, once you have it in the central VNet, which is your hub or your central virtual network, every other thing that wants to get into your network is being filtered at this point. So as long as you have the right network rule, the appropriate access control list, everything that you have, whether on-prem, cloud native, everything is going to be going through this exit point. So as long as they are going through its exit point, you can rest assured that Azure is doing a good work of security and selective connectivity based on the rules that you have set up. So yeah, you have the complete virtual network protection. You can have your inbound, spoke-to-spoke, and hybrid connections traffic well monitored. We also have centralized login, so we can have archived logs to a storage account. You have CM, and the way Azure Firewall works is we have made sure that everything that you need to make sure that your Azure Firewall is visible, like it has good visibility to your customer and to the user. We have provided those values, and we're going to talk about them before I round up on this. And also, yeah, for DevOps integration, this has been worked over time, and we have made sure we worked around all the tools that you need, and you can deploy this with Terraform. You can deploy this over API. You can basically use the different modes of deployment and for CI/CD. And also we have other service. We have service tags, integration with app service environment, backup, and other Azure services. So Firewall has been made that customers will use this without having to replace it due to, say, capacity problem, computing problem. So when you have this firewall in your environment, you want to make sure that you have access to the documentation to leverage on all the existing tools that will help you get the best from it. Excuse me, just water break. Right now, for application rules, we have FQD and filtering. So you can filter basically using fully qualified domain names. You can use FQD and tags. You can use default infrastructure rule collection. Of course, I've also mentioned that we are fully stateful network, fully stateful right now. So as it is, you can the firewall knows about all the traffic state, and if it has permitted a traffic a packet into your environment, it can be sure that you can be sure that that packet can roam around in your network as it should without losing information and tracking. We also have network address translation support. So for your source NAT and your destination NAT, for incoming traffic, for outbound traffic, there's nothing available. There's also threat intelligence. This is one key feature that I always tell my customers to take advantage of. You don't always have the database of known malicious IPs and domain. So Azure Threat Intelligence is like a portal, as I mentioned earlier, where they're like consortium of security agencies providing information about known malicious bots, IPs, and domain. So if you are plugged to this, then that's a very good advantage for you. Then you can be sure that even things you're not aware of yet, zero-day attack, any IP that is known to be malicious, your environment is also already aware of it by the reason of the threat intelligence. Then for monitoring, of course, we have network watch. This helps you to do like node-to-node monitoring. So when you have express route, so express route is how you connect, say your on-prem remote location to your main branch. And in that situation, you want to make sure that you don't. How we provide security in that way is the express route provides like a tunnel, so that connectivity between remote locations and your main location do not have to go through the internet first. So it goes straight through the Azure whole infrastructure, which is a very huge backbone, if I must mention that. And so yeah, when you want to do the node-to-node monitoring of such connections, Network Watcher makes that very easy for you. We also have NSG flow logs. So you can use all of these to gain better insight into what's going on. And it's also very useful when you're troubleshooting, because it's going to help you to get a quick fault isolation. You can say, okay, this is where it's coming from, and then you can quickly start working from there without having to go through the whole length of troubleshoot from A to B, B to C. Also, there's Azure Monitor Login, there's Monitor Metric. So these are things you can customize for your own use, and we have made it very easy to use. Recently, we released multiple public IPs. Before, you could just have one public IP to your firewall, but now you can have up to 250 public IPs for your firewall. We also have availability zone, which falls under our 99.99% SLA, making sure that you are always available. I've explained the architecture behind that, how you have inside the firewall, we have the public facing load balancers, and at the back of it, we have the virtual machine. Then we have native forced tunneling support, and we have IP groups. This is how you manage your IPs. So when you have a lot of IPs and you don't want to continue to manage them manually, you can just create an IP group and then send traffic to just that group, since all the IPs are contained. Just imagine like you're creating alias for a group of IPs or service tags. Then we have customer provided private ranges for no snat. So yeah, I'm gonna move on real quick because we're almost out of time. Then Azure Firewall Manager is how we manage a lot of firewalls. So in situations where you have more than one firewall in your environment and you want to manage, we want to have an easy way to manage them. Azure Firewall Manager is a tool. You don't even have to pay for it because it's like a logical component that helps you do the manage firewall from a centralized view. So when you open up your Azure Firewall Manager, what you see is all the policies and the firewalls that you have. And this is very, very important, especially when you want to deploy something similar to a lot of firewalls. So you don't have to do it one by one. You can create policy and apply it across multiple firewalls. It supports DevOps model, and so you have the hierarchical policy. So it's like inheritance. So basically, if you deploy something like a parent firewall, it can be inherited and they can be learning. Then there's work across regions and subscription and deployment. So Azure Firewall Manager basically is a portal where you manage all the firewalls, and it gives you that access to do that across multiple firewalls without doing it manually. And by using these tools, you improve the speed and opportunity to correct problems all at once. It also supports deployment architecture. We have the secure virtual hub and the hub virtual network. So in Azure Virtual WAN architecture, there's like optimized and automated branch connectivity to Azure. So when the secure virtual hub was created, it was created to provide automated routing to the firewall. So just imagine when you have a firewall, you have to create UDR, that's user-defined route, from your spoke to that hub firewall. So when you use secure virtual hub, you can avoid having to do that. So secure virtual hub, they are managed central virtual networks. They are managed. So it's designed as an alternative for Azure Firewall deployment. So it provides automated routing, so you won't have to configure the UDRs to route traffic back to your firewall. So it's designed with that basic Azure Firewall to spoke model in mind. So once you deploy it, you don't have to create the UDRs manually that, hey, spoke, you must go through this firewall as the next up. It already knows because it knows that is what is being deployed for. So every node or every spoke VNet in a secure virtual hub knows the way to the firewall as the next hub. So that's how you just deploy it, and it knows that UDR automatically for you. And in roadmap right now, we have the extended support for additional cloud native network security services. If we're coming to the end, log analytics and workbooks. So log analytics is a tool that gives you access to all the events going on in your environment. So log analytics you can have your own server, you can use storage spaces in our Azure. The idea is you want to have access to everything happening in your network, every event, different types of events, every single thing. So log analytics gives you that insight. And we also have workbooks that have been custom made for you, and you can also add to it. So we have put certain visualizations in the workbook, so you can have you can see the URL utilization, you can see where the attacks are coming from. You have all of these are already built in the workbook. But if you also feel like you need certain views, then you can add that to it. You can edit the ones that are existing. So these are workbooks that currently existing on GitHub, and you can use them to customize how you have access to the information going on in the back end of your environment. So yeah, these are additional resources that you can take advantage of. We have our GitHub home in aka.ms/Azure Network Security. So that's aka.ms/EasyNetSec. And if you add blog to that last URL, you can have access to our blog. So we advise that you actually go to this place and see what you can work with. We also have a demo environment, actually. You can go there and then you can see a simple architecture that you can just, by the click of a button, you can deploy a simple architecture. And that simple architecture is going to have a firewall in it, a couple of VMs in it, a couple of spoke virtual network in it, and then the application gateway and front of dimension. So you can play around and work with the simple proof of concepts that are in the blogs. So please make sure you you visit this website and try to work around and see what you can do with it. I think that should be one of my final slides. So yes, thank you for listening, and I hope this has been very informative for you.
Thank you, Toby. Although the team has answered lots of questions here in the back with through the IM, I'll be sharing here. In fact, I just shared a link with you guys and let me off a poll everywhere where you can go and submit more questions to the team so they can answer. And let me just share the screen. Okay, let's give it a moment for some questions to come in. So just one more reminder, the link is on your IM and also at the very top of what I'm sharing, top of the screens, paulev.com/security webinar. And there's one question there for the team.
I can jump in to answer the NSG question. I was about to type out the response, but now I see it on the screen. This is a pretty common question that we get, and it has a lot of answers. So I'll give a little bit of insight. Technically, yes, you could remove NSGs from either your subnets or your network interfaces if Azure Firewall is receiving all traffic to every every destination via routing. So you could. We do have customers that remove a lot of NSGs in order to just let Firewall centrally manage the traffic, as long as you have everything routed to it that you possibly can. Now, most commonly, though, what we see is customers using a combination of NSGs and Azure Firewall centrally. You'll tend to see NSGs at the subnet level and Azure Firewall controlling the traffic that goes from peered VNet to another VNet peered to that hub. So it's a combination of them. So technically, yes, you could remove NSG, but that's not the most common option.
Thank you, Anthony. And there's more coming up, and looks like we have four that we have a question that is being upvoted. Is Azure Firewall high available in regional level?
So Firewall does support availability zones. But there was one question that came up in the chat earlier about region to region hub failover. That's not something that is supported today, as you would have to fail over essentially your routes at that point. So it's not something that Firewall itself can handle. It's more of a routing question, and we don't have anything that's automated today beyond availability zones.
And then another one that is being upvoted for the wizard. Will there be a wizard in Azure Firewall, and that will help us set it up even more easily and faster?
Love to hear feedback on what you think could be improved by the current deployment wizard. There is a process that's gone through via the portal to deploy an Azure Firewall that prompts for all the standard questions for an Azure resource deployment. But if there is particular feedback that you have on what to include in that wizard to make it easier, feel free to give us that feedback. I'd love to hear it. You can either respond to us via this chat here, or always feel free to post questions and topics for discussion in the the discussion space, the forum that's attached to our network security blog.
Thank you, Anthony. And I'm just posting the for Q&A overflow, the forum that Anthony just mentioned. You have a link for easy reference. Okay. What about the third one from the top? When using ES, is there any way to use firewall with a Databrick VNet injection for web and control plane?
I have not used this. I'll defer to the rest of the team to see if anybody has experience with Databricks and VNet injection.
I've posted the link to that article on the Q&A.
Perfect. Can both, I'm going to what's being upvoted right now again, can both the Palo Alto and the Azure firewalls be integrated into Azure Firewall Manager?
No. Firewall Manager only manages Azure firewalls deployed either in VNets or VWAN hubs. Third-party integration Firewall Manager can be used to deploy third-party tools in a VWAN hub, notably iBoss and Zscaler at this point, but Firewall Manager does not have insight into the management console of those devices. It just helps with getting the deployment there and the routing setup, but it doesn't actually interface with, let's say, a third-party API to control firewall rules. If that's something that you want to see in the future, let us know. If we get more and more requests for that, we can, of course, start looking into it. And I see a lot of questions about what technology Azure Firewall is based on. Well, we can tell you that it is. We talked about there being a load balancing component, both inbound and outbound, with a VM scale set sandwiched in between, and it does run on Linux inside. I'm not sure how much more detail I can get, but it's our own proprietary. It's not a third party licensed anything. It's our own proprietary system.
Well, thank you. We're getting close to the end here, and before ending the call, I just want to wrap up here quickly. Let's just exit from this. And so basically, I just wanted to remind everybody that, and I have posted the link for the upcoming webinars. So as I mentioned, this was a kickoff of Azure Network Security series, and we have 7 more to come all the way through the second week of December. So therefore, please visit us and register if you're interested. In case we missed to answer your questions, or if you have additional questions, you can visit us on our Azure Network Security Forum. Again, that's the aka.ms/Azure Network Security Community. I would like to close this webinar by thanking Toby for an awesome presentation. And thank you to the rest of the team who helped answering questions. And most of all, I want to thank all of you for being part of our community and for joining us on the webinars like this. And we hope to see you next time. Goodbye.